The year was 1998. I went to my uncle's house and my little cousin was playing as a blue hedgehog with terrible mouth animations on a console I had never seen before. This was the day that I discovered Sonic. Since then, I've been a big fan of the Blue Blur and the games that followed after his debut on the 3D space. Specifically, I was obsessed with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle when it came out for the GameCube. I would obsess over ranks, the gripping and depressing story of Shadow the Hedgehog, and of course, I would obsess over Chaos and their weird shaped heads. But as we all know, Sonic 3D games have never been that good or polished. I mean, let's be honest, even my favorite Sonic game, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, had collision issues and janky movement that made the gameplay sometimes very frustrating. But there was always a charm to Sonic games. But as time went by, that charm started to dissipate as the audience started to mature and have a better understanding of what made a game objectively good or at least decent. It became a laughable series, no longer being considered as a good series, even though Sonic's popularity can be comparable to that one of the Red Plumber. They're both giants, not just in the gaming world, but in media overall, with Sonic movies crushing box office records for gaming movies. However, what originally made Sonic great was severely lacking. Well, here comes Sonic Frontiers, a game that was revealed to everyone's surprise as an open world Sonic game. I was giddy but skeptical because I've learned to curb my expectations and enthusiasm when it came to Sonic games after recently having played the Sonic Colors remaster for the PS5. It was just as janky as its predecessor, and I had given up hope for a decent Sonic game, at least a 3D Sonic game. However, I can say I have been modestly surprised with Frontiers, but how about we take it from the top? The story. The story, much like any Sonic game, is as straightforward as you can imagine. Dr. Eggman is up to no good and you gotta stop him and save the world and your friends. Although this story does adopt a more modern plot point with Sonic traveling from a cyberspace of some sort. Now, I won't go over every single point of the story because one, I haven't even beaten the game completely. And two, since I do think that this game is worth the price to experience it for yourself, what I did find very intriguing regarding the story is how hands-off it is right from the start. The villain and the challenge to overcome are presented to the player in the first few minutes with little to no explanation. It just drops you in the world and lets you go at it. Sonic Frontiers adopts a very modern way of storytelling that we've seen in previous games such as Elden Ring or, cliche alert, Breath of the Wild. I know. All right. Believe me, I know. Although not as subtle as those games, it at least gives you, the player, the freedom to tackle the objectives right out of the gate or focus more on the main story, for example. What's important is that it's up to the player on how to proceed and it is not longer linear. Now, we've all grown accustomed to how 3D Sonic games are designed. They're mostly platforming levels with cutscenes in between each stage with just a simple overworld or menu to go from level to level. Frontiers is designed less like that and more like, say, a Mario Odyssey, in which Sonic runs around large islands, each with a myriad of activities to do, things to collect, rather simple puzzles to solve, and levels to unlock. This is what I think was Sonic Frontiers' biggest achievement in this experiment of a game. Unlocking the full potential of Sonic's speed and letting the player explore the world rather than putting the player under rigid, linear levels makes it way more exciting to, well, go fast. Every island has mini bosses you can fight in very distinct but creative ways. Everything from an enemy that lays out a floating track for you to run on at super fast speeds, to a sand shark whom you need to tame in order to attack, to humongous beasts you need to climb a la Shadow of the Colossus, makes this exploration a little frightening but a little more exciting. A huge part of the game exploration are the collectibles needed in order to unlock part of the story. These collectibles are scattered around the island and can be tracked by using the map. Of course, you need to unlock certain parts of the map, much like you do in Breath of the Wild. I'm sorry. It is what it is, man. Breath of the Wild inspired so many game mechanics and just games in general that it's just gonna be referenced throughout the entirety of this generation, probably. The collectibles are almost always at the end of a short sort of platforming mini levels scattered around. Most of these are simple enough to navigate and to track down. Honestly, they're a little too easy at times, but I will say that it made collecting them rather fun and not a chore, much like it can feel in other open world games, such as for example Assassin's Creed, where it all kind of sort of just becomes a checklist. You're checking off stuff to do and explore. Not so much you just randomly falling into these short little platform areas and at the end being rewarded with a collectible, which is needed for the story. I quite enjoy collecting these things and would be pleasantly surprised when I even collected some of these by accident. I was just randomly exploring, hitting these jump springs, grinding these rails. It was almost always discovering stuff because of how fun it was to discover these stuff. Other collectibles get Sonic health and defense ability upgrades, as well as speed and wallet upgrades. I appreciated how common these upgrades were, but after almost getting half of the upgrades, I kind of quickly realized that this wasn't necessarily making the game any easier. The upgrades, if anything, felt like an afterthought or were very minimal in actually making Sonic any stronger. Which is a shame given how tedious and repetitive combat can be in this game. That is something I will talk about later in this video. Overall, the design of the world made this game a very enjoyable experience, and I believe it showed us that what the evolution of Sonic games will be in the future, and I think this is the right direction for 3D Sonic games. Now, the music. If there's one thing I enjoy in a good game is just as good of a soundtrack. But it's no surprise whenever a Sonic game has good music. I mean, they go hand in hand. Good music, Sonic game. I've always said that Sonic music is so good that it makes me forget I'm playing as a blue hedgehog. Like, the thought of you playing as a blue hedgehog is so ridiculous, but the music takes me and just engages me in such a way that I completely forget that I'm playing a Sonic game. That's just how good the music is. Well, Frontiers is no different. The EDM tunes heard across multiple cyberspace levels are so groovy, so easy to listen to that I found myself just playing these songs in the background as I'm actually writing this script. God damn! The boss themes caught me so off guard that I'll just do you a favor and not even put it in this video, because it is honestly some of the best video game music I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. It's something every single person needs to experience for themselves while playing the game. Honestly, it is just amazing. Even the first boss is music to my ears. Overall, Sonic Frontiers soundtrack is on par with previous games that I even dare to say it's my favorite Sonic soundtrack to date. Now, the combat. Now, it can't all be Amy Rose tinted glasses with this game. There's some obvious issues with the game, specifically when it comes to combat. I will admit that I'm not a big fan of button mashers, although I did enjoy Bayonetta 1 and 2 very much. But when the combos consist of mashing a single button for the most part, it starts to become annoying to even engage with low-level enemies. I will say that there's a skill tree that enables you to unlock new moves to be added when doing combos, but even then, it doesn't take a genius to just hold the button mid-combo to make said combo variation. It's really boring at the end of the day. The combos felt a little bland, although they are pretty cool looking. And some of the enemies did have a good variation when it came to the patterns needed in defeating them, as I've mentioned before, but the lower level enemies, basically the ones you encounter a lot more than any mini boss or main boss, were a chore to deal with after a while, and it was just a tedious experience. I began avoiding them at all costs, given that the rewards for defeating them weren't even enticing enough, and the button mashing had become annoying at worst. Now, another huge shortcoming in this game is the graphics. Now, I won't say that it's an ugly or rough looking game by any means, because it's not. I actually think it's one of the prettier Sonic games, or at least one of the more polished ones graphically. But my issue with the graphics comes with the extreme amount of pop-in experience throughout the open world sections. It's very distracting, and at times it hinders the exploration a bit. It seems as if the render distances for these objects isn't very far, or maybe Sonic just moves so fast across the map for even a PS5 to render everything. Regardless, I would excuse the shortcoming if I was playing this on the Switch, for example, but I'm playing this on a next gen console. There's just no excuse for it. This could definitely be more on the games engine side rather than the hardware side, but I still think it's distracting enough that I can't really forgive it or justify it as a one-off glitch or something. And I do hope they patch it in the future, because it is very, very distracting at times. In conclusion, Sonic Frontiers is a step in the right direction, and I'm glad the Sonic team decided to experiment and move the series forward in such a risky way. I hope this serves as a taste and a feedback round for the Sonic team developers to continue fleshing out ideas that'll hopefully bring back the series to a respectable place in the industry. And I say this out of love, because I mean, I have a camel hat right now, but if I could, I would put on my tinfoil hat right now. And I really want to think that this game was snubbed because it wasn't taken seriously for a nomination in the Game Awards. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, but this game should have at least been considered for a best soundtrack nomination. But I think that due to the series' infamy, it was probably not taken that seriously, and I think it hindered its chances at being at least nominated for one award. But folks, what do you think of Sonic Frontiers? Have you played it? Are you waiting for a sale? I will say I did get this game for a sale. Literally less than 2 weeks since its release, GameStop, Amazon, and a bunch of other retailers actually started giving out deals on this game as part of Black Friday, which I'd imagine it was Black Friday. I was able to get it for $40 instead of, I think it was the $70 price tag. I'm enjoying it so far, and I really do recommend this game if you're a longtime Sonic fan. It is a breath of fresh air. It is very refreshing to play Sonic Frontiers, especially with, you know, the series history, especially with 3D games. We were starting to see like a revival again with Sonic Mania, of course, but Sonic Frontiers really solidified that the Sonic team is taking the series in the right direction. And honestly, I can't put it down, because it's just that fun and that good to play. It's a great game. It's a great Sonic. It's not just a great Sonic game, it's just a great game overall. But folks, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I've been TrueFernie. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs down, because every single bit helps. Links to my socials are down below. Please make sure to follow me on Twitter, where I spend most of my waking hours and where I think I might have to be finding an alternative at this point, because it's not looking good for Twitter, man. It is not looking good for Twitter. But either way, make sure to follow me on Twitter, because I'm sure I'll announce where I'm going next when that site inevitably crashes. Also, make sure to join our Discord server, where we talk anything and everything gaming, anime, TVs, movies, anything that might interest you as my viewer. And folks, please take care of each other, but most importantly, take care of yourself. Peace. Gotta go fast.